Good evening. My name is Deborah Miller, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my Smartboard project. It's based on the story The Mitten by Jan Brett, and it's a story retelling lesson. The unit here is Kindergarten English Language Arts, and again, it focuses on story retelling. The essential question is, what strategies do good readers use to retell stories? And this focuses on Common Core State Standards in English Language Arts, reading literature, and it's kindergarten 1, 2, and 3. The objectives here would be with prompting and support, students will ask and answer questions about key details in a text. With prompting and support, students will retell familiar stories, including key details. And with prompting and support, students will identify characters, settings, and major events in a story. The teacher page here, the teacher notes, just talk about it being English Language Arts as the subject. The topic is The Mitten by Jan Brett. Grade is kindergarten, so we're talking about 5 and 6-year-old children. Prior knowledge here would be vocabulary like details, characters, sequencing, text, illustration. And the other thing about prior knowledge here would be that the kids would have heard this essential question before. In kindergarten, because repetition is so important, we revisit those essential questions again and again and again throughout the year, using different pieces of literature to illustrate what we're trying to teach. So the kids at this point, by the time we do the Mitten, would have heard this essential question before. It shouldn't be new to them. It should be something that they're building their knowledge upon. And the cross-curricular links in this lesson would be writing, science, social studies, art, and music. So basically, this lesson introduces students to a literary study of Jan Brett's The Mitten. The story would be used to focus on story retelling through details, sequencing, and story elements. In this activity, the teacher will facilitate the lesson in a whole group setting with opportunities for students to interact individually or in small groups as dictated by the slides. The reason for that is that kindergartners are not real independent at 5 and 6 years old, so a lot of the things that we would do here we would probably do as a whole group activity. Although throughout the lesson there's opportunities there for kids to do things independently or as a center or in a small group. Pre-assessment for this activity took place through other stories presented in the classroom. Skills have been monitored through teacher observation and a comprehension checklist. And distributive summarization will be taking place throughout the whole lesson as students do the little mini activities that assess their understanding and alert me to any misconceptions that they might have. And you'll see some of those as we go through the slides. At the end of the lesson, there's a summative assessment. The activity promotes Common Core standards, technology standards, and 21st century skills. The next slide is just a concept map here, and it focuses up here on the fact that good readers retell stories, and of course that relates to Common Core standards. And then it talks about how exactly good readers do that. Well, they describe the main idea, they use story elements, they recall key details, and they use sequencing. And these really are all interrelated because they all focus on those key details. So this is a concept map we would create together as a class and talk about why those details are so important in all of these story elements. And then you can see down here some of the graphic organizers that are going to come a little bit later in this lesson so that the kids can see exactly how this is going to tie in with what they're doing. There's a pre-assessment built into the lesson, and this is kind of a fun interactive one for 5-year-olds. It's a little easy, it seems a little easy, but for them it's just trying to get them to think about what it is that good readers do and what good readers don't do. So hopefully they can look at this and they can say, good readers listen to the story. And when they click on it, it's a little graphic that shows them, yes, that's right, good readers do. That happy face lets them know they were correct. But then if they click on something like good readers don't listen to the story, you're going to see a sad face, which means that that's not something good readers do. So it's just a little interactive activity they can do. The next part of the pre-assessment would be thinking back on that prior knowledge about how good readers retell a story. And this is something that I would have the students try to tell me. We would think about it together and brainstorm as a group what we have learned before, and hopefully they can come up with a few ideas. As we slide away, we can see that good readers use details, and it goes on to think about some of the other things that they do. They remember characters, and so on and so forth. Moving to the next slide, you can see there's the story The Mitten. And this is just another chance for students to interact with the book. Before I do this lesson, I would read the book aloud with the kids so that they could see the printed book. But then when they click on this, it takes them to YouTube, which gives them another variation.
The name of this story is The Mitten, a Ukrainian folktale, adapted and illustrated by Jan Brett.
And you can just see that it walks them through the story and lets them have a nice little visual and audio to remember the story again or hear it another time if they need to. Moving on to the next slide, this is kind of a fun little slide because it gets kids thinking about those story details and those story elements. And it's nice for kids that are multisensory, who maybe their multiple intelligence is a little stronger in auditory and music, because what happens is they can click on the detective here and it will bring up a cute little video that talks about the 5 elements of a story. And it's just kind of a nice little hip-hop song that the kids really like, that reminds them of what it is.
Check it out, y'all. Yeah, setting, that's like where it's going down. Could be the train compartment, a castle, or a town. Could be the Arctic winter, like to build a fire. The temperature's dropping, excitement's getting higher. Setting sets the scene, so the scene seems set. Could be an Italian.
You get the idea there, but that's something that the kids like to hear again and again and again, and it's just a nice way to remind them of what the story elements are and get them to remember in a different format. The next slide is an interactive slide, and this is where they're actually thinking about sequencing the story. And what they're doing here is thinking about the animals that were from the story The Mitten and then animals that were not in the story. So they can take an animal here like the meadow mouse and remember, oh yes, he was the one who came and made the great bear sneeze. And then maybe they would take one like the gingerbread man and go, oh no, he was not in the story. And then what they can do is they can check to see if they were correct. And they can also solve it to see where everything goes and then reset it and play it again. So that'd be nice for centers or for individual work with kids to be able to come and do that. The next one is, it's a graphic organizer about main character, and it talks about Nikki, the main character in the story. And this is something that I would do as a group. We would use the magic pen and we would work together to kind of fill in this graphic organizer. There's another graphic organizer here where the kids can think about setting, and they would again use the magic pens to come on up, and maybe they would do some illustrating of the setting themselves. And I would probably leave this open for them at a center or as a small group activity. So this again appeals to those kids who are artistic and want to draw and create. And the final graphic organizer is about plot and just thinking about what happened in the beginning, the middle, and the end of the story. And again, probably something I would fill out as a whole group activity. The next screen is a fun sequencing activity, so getting kids to remember the events of the story and the sequence in which they happened. So what they have to do here is they actually have to look at these animals and try to remember how they were sequenced in the mitten, which came first. So they drag the animals down here to the number, put them in order, and then they can take the screen and they can reveal to see if they were correct and check their answer, which is a fun interactive activity that kids can do. The next interactive activity is a fun little quiz for kids, and it just gives them clues about the different animals in the mitten. So again, they have to think about those key details. I was prickly in the first animal in the mitten. Well, they have to think about which animal was that, and they take a guess and click, and they can see if they were correct or not. Just a nice little tie-in activity here is to have a little science fun. And what I did was I took real-life photos of all the different animals so that the kids could see what they look like in real life and how they compare to the graphics of Jan Brett. And then when they click on the animal, they can hear the sound that the animal makes, and they can explore each animal in that way. There's a little video here, and this is just a video about Jan Brett, and it's at her home. And she goes on to talk a little bit more about the mitten and how she made it, and even gives the kids a drawing lesson. So just another way for kids to go a little deeper.
Come bursting out. They love to come outside. Hey, chickies. Hi, little ones. Who wants to come outside?
And she talks about how she has gotten ideas and inspiration for her stories. One more extension page that I have here are some links that take kids to different places. So those kids who really want to go even deeper can come to the Jan Brett website. If they click here, that will take them to her official site. If they click here, this takes them to be able to print masks out. So if they want to dramatize the story, they can actually act it out. And then we have Hedgie's Book-O-Matic for kids who want to read more by Jan Brett. They can click on this and answer a little quiz, and that will recommend the perfect Jan Brett book for them. At the very end, what we're going to do is use a summative assessment, and I would have kids probably think, pair, share a little bit here to think about what it is good readers do to remember a story. And then we would reveal good readers use details, they remember the characters, they remember the setting, they remember the main idea, and they sequence the story. And my final slide is just my resources. So you can see it's a pretty comprehensive unit based on one story, The Mitten, but something that the kids really love and would be engaged in. The project uses a piece of literature to teach story elements and retelling with key details. In kindergarten, skills are taught multiple times throughout the year, and key learning is revisited. This essential question will be looked at through many different pieces of literature. Presenting the Common Core standards through use of technology like a smartboard gives children a chance to learn in nonlinear ways. It offers extensions for children that want to investigate the topic more, and it appeals to the multiple intelligence of students through games, social activities, visuals, and auditory examples. The format of a lesson like this is engaging and interactive, and it's a must for very young students like kindergartners. In addition, this interactive lesson promotes 21st century learning skills and ISTE skills like creativity and innovation, research and information fluency, critical thinking, problem solving, and decision making, and technology operations and concepts. I really believe that students will be excited to interact with this lesson. I think it'll be fun and memorable for them and something that they really want to do. In addition, I think that a lot of the aspects of this lesson can be reused and reapplied to future literature studies. So some of these games and activities really could be translated into different books that we're looking at. It's very fun and exciting to see all the resources that are out there relating to the Mitten. There's a lot online for kids to look at, and there's a wealth of activity that students can engage in to enhance their learning. So, those kids who really get excited and really want to follow up really can take off with this and go really far. So I think it's a really nice way to not only teach these essential skills and the essential questions and understandings, but it's also a way to get kids to be lifelong learners. So I thank you for watching, and that's it.